What is up, guys? Welcome back to week number 3 of Project Planche. Before we get into this week's episode, I just want to mention the sponsors of the program, and that is Ido, who make this lovely top that I'm wearing, as well as Oxland, who make the multivitamin that I've been taking for the past year, as well as throughout this program. So, week number 3 was all about training harder progressions for lower reps and higher sets. This meant we were going for between sort of like 3 to 5 repetitions on most of our exercises, but then performing them for upwards of 5 and 6 and 7 sets. This allows us to get a lot of time under tension on harder progressions and hopefully build a really good muscle memory so that we can progress our skills. Just before we get into this week's episode, I'd just like to say if you are enjoying this series, please leave a like and a comment down below. And if you find that it helps you out and you know somebody who might be interested, then share it on Twitter, Facebook, anything like that. And if you are trying it out and you're making any progressions, then please tag me on Instagram at MovementTom. I've changed my handle, but I would love to see how everyone's getting on, or just hear what your opinions are on the program. So please let me know in the comments down below. I always respond to comments. But without further ado, let's get into week number 3 and our straight arm day. So getting straight into straight arm day today, and we're having a little play with the Straddle Planche. As you probably know, this is the hopeful final goal of this project. I want to get a 2-second hold with a 45 degrees piked straddle planche. As you can see here, it's getting closer, it's improving, but it's going to take time and it's just not quite there yet. So I'm working on the forward lean quite a bit at the moment, and one of the exercises I've been doing to improve that is this. So the idea here is that you don't pick your legs up, but you simply use the balancing of the planche to kind of lift those legs up like a hinge. So it's really going to focus on making sure you're forward enough and keeping that body position rigid and picking those legs up through balance rather than core. I'm then pairing it with these straddle front lever dynamically raised isometrics. Again, just working some more challenging progressions, but just doing them for a shorter amount of time and a lot more sets. Then going to work on my straddle handstand press a bit. So while I was doing that, I thought I'd share with you my compression warm-up that I do. I generally try and work in my pancake stretch, as well as these straddle core compressions, which are really tough and definitely give you a bit of a cramp. I would have gone for some shoulder press eccentrics if I could have done, but I was a little bit fatigued after doing like 6 or so sets of the first 2 exercises. So I decided just to go for a few sets of a straddle press followed by a straddle eccentric. And I'm really focusing on that core compression as well as maintaining balance in the handstand. We paired these with the usual L-sit exercise, but instead we're going for some Tusk V-Sit progression. So this is a little bit more challenging for your support muscles, i.e. your back and your triceps and your arms, but a little bit less intense on your core and hip flexors. So because it wasn't working on my hip flexors as much, I was going to pair them with these hamstring compressions, which are by far, in my opinion, the best core exercise for improving your L-sit, your handstand press, any compression sort of exercise. It's just really good at isolating that, and it does give you the cramps, as I said before. You just want to try and suck your stomach in and really tense those hip flexors. I like to also pair that with some stretching of the hamstrings, just again because that is also another important aspect of this compression. Next, we're working my favourite aspect of this program, and that is my thoracic mobility. It's definitely been a really weak point for me. However, training it 3 times a week is really starting to pay off. As you can see now, there should be a substantial difference between my week 1 progression and my week 4 progression. I'm really pleased with the direction that my shoulder mobility is going in, and as I said, it's definitely paying off training it 3 times a week. So it'd be interesting to see where we are at the end of the 8-week program. And then I was always working it with some skin the cats just to maintain that shoulder health and stretch out in the opposite direction. I'm not doing any higher reps with the bridge or the skin the cat, as they serve a purpose of mobility rather than following the periodization of the program. We're now going to move on to the front split mobility routine. As I've mentioned, I think in every single episode, you're going to want to go and head over to EMMET Lewis's channel if you are interested in loaded mobility and watch all his awesome content that he's got on his YouTube channel. This doesn't really change week from week, so I'm starting off as always with this kneeling bridge quad stretch. This is really great at building strength in that hip flexor, as well as building strength in your glutes and hamstrings. It's just probably the best loaded mobility exercise that I've come across for the hip flexor. Even when you're in this position here, you still want to keep your quads and glutes and hamstrings tensed and really make it a loaded position rather than a relaxed position. We're then going to go into these pulsing hamstring stretches. Now, my progression so far has been slow, but it's definitely coming quick. I can actually now get down to my elbow to toe within the first set. I think I was hitting this towards the end of the first set previously, whereas now I'm getting it right at the beginning of the first set. So it's definitely improving, and my mobility cold has also improved quite a bit. And the same with these front split holds. As I said, it wasn't too bad to begin with, and it's slowly improving. It's not a huge goal for me, although I would like to progress it. It's getting there. We're still a few inches off, but maybe one day we'll make it. The left leg, however, is not so good, so I'm trying to do a little bit more time on my left leg to balance things out. As you can see, there's probably a good 10 centimeters difference between the two, maybe 5 centimeter difference between the two. On to day 2, and we're just doing some active recovery as always, working some foam rolling, pausing on those tight spots, and then also doing some of the stretching routine that you can find for a full video in the description down below. I think foam rolling is a great way to recover passively. I really like to just foam roll basically my entire lower body, as for me that's what gets really sore. Especially using the cross balls, they are by far the most painful thing to work, especially on your glute, but they are really great at giving some mobility to that hip joint and hip capsule. If you want to learn more about this, then I would highly recommend Kelly Starrett's book called Becoming a Supple Leopard. He has in there so much great information about mobility and using tips like I'm doing now to progress your mobility and flexibility. I was then just having a play around with some elbow stands, as I find that I can get into a better hollow handstand position, and it's really helping to open up my shoulders just throughout the day. So on to day number 3, and it is the dynamic day. I was just playing about, having a bit of fun with some handstands beforehand, and I almost killed myself on that sliding platform. So in this dynamic day, we're going for some lower reps, and to do that we are using these planche hinges, is what I'm calling them. Essentially you want to keep the same body position throughout, and all you're going to do is lift up into a tuck planche position and lower back down into a tuck L-sit. The idea here is to maintain the exact same body position and just use your shoulders to hinge your body up. This is great for maintaining and working out where that body position should be for the planche. I'm pairing that with these 360 tuck lever pulls. I can actually do these in a straddle, but I can't fit it in the gym that I'm at, so I'm just using an advanced tuck position for now. This is great at just building general core, front lever and back lever strength. I really do like this exercise, and it's kind of just an advanced variation of a skin the cat. We're then throwing in some ring muscle ups. I'm not going for any less reps than I would usually go on these, because I can only actually get about 3 solid reps anyway. They are feeling a bit better, and my technique is improving now that I'm actually doing them on a regular basis rather than every now and again, but there's still a long way to go before I'm happy with this. Finally, we're moving on to the mobility section of this day, and we're working some more bridge rotations, the second exercise we're using throughout the week for the bridge. This is one of my favourite exercises. It's a bit more dynamic, but I actually find it works great for an active mobility for your hips as well, because you really have to tense your glutes and open up your hips to get into that bridge position. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 combo. I am seeing a progression between this and my first few weeks, although it's still a little bit hit and miss as to how good they are. Now, instead of doing some single arm hangs today, I'm doing these false grip hangs, as I was kind of thinking that my false grip is a little bit weak, and that's almost what's letting down my muscle up. These are really, really tough, and I didn't actually hold them particularly long. It's a pretty painful exercise, but I think it's definitely going to improve the false grip. I will probably start throwing these in, as well as the single arm hangs, periodically throughout this program. So on to the middle split mobility routine. And as like the front split mobility routine, it doesn't really change too much. So we're still going to be going for similar reps and holds for every single exercise. I have heard that you're supposed to be able to do sort of roughly a 5-minute horse squat when you start getting good at it. I think I only managed about 45 seconds in this clip that you're watching now, so then maybe I need to start pushing this a little bit further and trying to hold it a bit longer. The idea here is to keep your legs at 90 degrees, and mine were a little bit too high in that clip, so something to work on. Then moving on to a middle split hold. I'm actually pretty happy with how my middle splits are progressing, although it's very, very slow, and I think I'm not particularly genetically gifted when it comes to middle split mobility, but I'm sure it will get there eventually with the amount of intensity that I'm putting on it with the stretching. I then also like to work in these kind of straddle rocks before going into a pancake stretch. As I've shown you previously, loaded mobility stuff is found in the description down below under EMMET Lewis. He has so many good videos explaining loaded mobility. I won't go into it now, but essentially using weights to get into a better position. As you can see here, I've got that 10 kilo on the back, helping me get lower into this pancake. You also want to make sure you're tensing your legs and glutes the entire time in this exercise, as you want them to be working rather than be relaxed and stretched out.
What is up, guys? So we're on day 5, I think, bent arm day anyway, and I thought I'd mix out today. The weather's a little bit warmer, it's like 7-8 degrees, so I thought it's a bit nice. Thought I'd try and get outside and smash a workout, so hopefully it's a little bit more picturesque today than the usual crowded gym. And I'm just going to show you that you can kind of just go anywhere and do this. I'll show you the setup that I've got now. So I've literally hung some rings up on a tree in the park, and then over here we have some parallel bars, which I'm very fortunate to have, but again, not entirely necessary. So I'm going to play about with this and just enjoy being outside. Catch you guys in a bit.
So although working out outside was a nice idea, and I do love to do it in summer, it still is pretty cold at the moment. This is sort of January, February time in England. It's only about 6 degrees, and that definitely did affect my performance. I wasn't as strong during this workout, and I didn't feel like I got a particularly great session in either, which is a little bit disappointing. But it was nice to get outside, and it definitely makes me look forward to summer. So we're starting off with these handstand eccentrics. Ideally, I would have gone for a full handstand rep, although, as I said, I wasn't performing as well, and I literally just couldn't do a handstand press. I could only do the eccentrics. I couldn't find a particularly level piece of ground either to do it on, and as I said, I just wasn't feeling that I was performing as well. We're then throwing in these archer chin-ups, and this is for progressing our one-arm chin-up. The idea here is to keep the arm that you're not pulling with completely straight throughout the movement, and you're basically using that arm a hell of a lot less and just focusing on the one arm chin up with the other arm. My left arm is definitely considerably weaker than my right arm, so I might have to start doing some extra sets on that arm.
Then we're throwing in the usual pseudo planche push-ups. These are probably one of the best fundamental exercises for the planche. Definitely worth throwing in. I did forget to throw them in during about 2 months of training a while back, and they're still not quite as strong as the other aspects of my planche, which is why I'm working them a lot in this program. The key here is to make sure that you definitely push all the way up on the top of the movement and really get into that hollow body position. We're then throwing in some tuck front lever rows. Again, like my planche, the rowing aspect and the bent arm aspect is definitely weaker than my straight arm. So I'm really trying to emphasize that in this program and really trying to work on those rows and push-ups in the planche and the front lever, try and get them up to the same level as my straight arm strength. Then, as it is lower rep week, we're going to be doing these more challenging bridge push-ups. These actually were pretty tough. And I really did have to grind it out for just 3 reps. But I was still pretty pleased, as I said earlier, with my shoulder mobility. It's definitely getting a hell of a lot better than it was when I started, so I'm really excited to see how this turns out ultimately. Then, instead of doing the tricep extensions as listed in the program, I threw in some ring dips as well, because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't feel like I had a good workout in, but I felt that I actually could do some decent ring dips. I thought at least then I'd get one good exercise in and get a little bit of a pump in my chest as well. And it was nice to be able to do some dips where my feet aren't dragging along the floor in the gym, which is a bit of a change. So after this, I decided to have a little bit of a play on the ring, just to have a little bit of fun, playing with some L-sits and just generally mucking about. I kept having kids come up to me and asking me to have a play on the ring, so I threw that in for whatever reason. But it's just important to have fun and have a play and just play with different movements, which is what I did for about 20 minutes after the end of this workout. So kicking straight into our lower body day. We're working the usual split squats. I think this is slowly becoming my favourite leg exercise. It's nice to throw a bit of weight on the bar and do some weighted stuff that I haven't been able to do for a while because of my hip. It's definitely feeling a lot stronger and definitely less painful. I mean, I don't get any pain during this particular movement, but I think I am in the future going to play with some squats and some deadlifts and really start into it slow, lightweight, and just keep working that movement, and then hopefully we can get rid of this really annoying glute issue. Also, using the foam rolling that I mentioned earlier in day 2 has been helping a lot with this. Just showing you here another reason why I love this exercise, and that is the balancing aspect. You're really having to work hard with your feet and ankles and calves to balance you out during this movement, which is something that you don't do on a regular basis with most exercises. So it's nice to throw in a little bit of balance in there, and definitely is something that is probably undertrained in a lot of athletes. Then onto the usual natural hamstring curls or Harrop curls. These are a pretty fundamental leg exercise, great for building that glute and hamstring strength. As I mentioned earlier, it's probably one of my weak aspects. So this is something I've been focusing a lot, especially in the leg day. I'm doing these and some glute ham raises as well. Just in itself, like a pretty challenging exercise is trying to hold your body straight and just lean forward only a little bit, as you see me do now. Just trying to hold that position there is actually really quite tough. You could almost just make that into an exercise just by itself. Next, we're going to mix up our lower body circuit in today's lower body day. Instead of doing some single leg stuff, we're going to be doing some just explosive and double leg stuff. So I'm starting off with these broad jumps, just trying to do a sissy squat down onto your knees and then flicking up and broad jumping as far as possible. My explosiveness in my legs is not something that's particularly incredible, so it's definitely something that I'm trying to focus on with these leg days. I would like to be a little bit more explosive, a little bit more powerful. As I mentioned in previous episodes, my gym that I go to isn't particularly great for doing stuff like box jumps, which is a little bit annoying. So I have to wait until summer really, or when it gets a little bit warmer, to do them outside. we're thrown in for the second exercise, these hip thrusters. Now this is very, very similar to the single leg glute ham raise. Essentially the same exercise, but we're just using weight to make it more challenging rather than just using one leg. And that's because we're using both legs for the first exercise as well. So we're just trying to keep it on the same sort of workout. And then because it is low rep week, we're going to weight down our Cossack squat. Now I have got two 12k kettlebells here, which definitely did make this exercise freaking hard. As far as a loaded stretch as well on those hamstrings, it is pretty fantastic. I think I did actually only manage 4 to 5 reps on each leg on this exercise, although it's hard to count because this set seems to go on for like 2 minutes. But again, I did enjoy this exercise. I do love the Cossack squat. It's just a great all-round mass flexibility gainer. And then finishing up with some loaded flexibility, we're going to be working these Jefferson Curls. These are proven to be one of my favourite hamstring exercises. The idea here is to keep that rounded back at the bottom. It may look a bit odd, but this is actually an exercise focused around spine health, so it's important to start curling up from the bottom of your spine rather than trying to keep that good spinal position that you'd see in something like a straight leg deadlift. If you haven't used this exercise before, I would definitely recommend checking out a tutorial video just to make sure you're getting the form right. You essentially just want to curl down, starting from your neck. You want to curl down vertebrae by vertebrae down your spine all the way to your hip and then back up again, starting from the hip to the neck. It is a bit of a weird exercise to get going with. Definitely use a lightweight to start with, especially if your hamstring mobility isn't great, but it's kind of a cool one to have a bit of fun with. And then in addition to the leg workout, I also just had a bit of a play with some locomotion stuff, which is something that Ido Portal preaches, and that's kind of walking essentially, but just in different ways. So this is called the duck walk. You essentially just want to keep tiptoeing in a squat position. It's good for building some health in your feet and some strength in that arch of your foot, as well as the balance aspect that I mentioned about earlier. It's also good for improving your knee health as well, as it's a pretty tough exercise. But that pretty much wraps up our leg day. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, there was a few different aspects to it, so hopefully you found that interesting. But we'll be back next week with another episode, so I'll catch you guys then.
So that is it, guys. One tough and long week out the way. On to next week, which is going to be another overload week. Before we get that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below, and maybe share it if you found it really useful, and subscribe if you want to see more content. But that's pretty much it for this week. I hope you guys are enjoying the program and your training's going well. Have an awesome week, and I'll catch up with you in episode 4. Peace.